The UFC antitrust lawsuit is now over. I'm Ant Walker here with Ringside Intel, and let's break it down. So earlier today, news broke that the UFC's antitrust lawsuit has now been officially settled. It was scheduled to go to trial April 15th. However, that will no longer happen as this matter, for the most part, is resolved. I mean, it's not official. Courts do have to approve it, but for all intents and purposes, this is a dead issue now. The UFC settled for $335 million, which breaks down to about $280,000 per plaintiff. This case, it was originally filed in 2014, and we've had a lot of drags and delays and whatnot. So not only is this payout for $335 million settling this matter, it also doesn't come with any sort of changes to the contract structure. This is a big win for the UFC. According to Nate Query, the former middleweight title challenger, who has been one of the more outspoken critics of the promotion since he left and has attached himself to several efforts to sort of change the sport and legitimize things, he went on record today shortly after the news broke saying that this was offering some level of victory. It wasn't exactly what they envisioned. It didn't give them everything that they wanted, but it allowed them to, one, get some money, some punitive damages, but also it allowed them to sort of move on. Because, court cases are very, very expensive. They are very trying. They're very emotionally and mentally draining. And, according to his statement, this could have dragged on for like 10 years before they got to this point today, a point that didn't necessarily guarantee that they would get anything in return. So the question now to ask is, what does this mean for the UFC? For the UFC, it's simple. It means business as usual. That means without any sort of regulatory pressure to increase fighter pay, without any sort of regulatory pressure to loosen up the contractual restrictions, they don't have to change anything. That means there's the status quo. And for those stuck on the idea that $335 million is a lot of money to leave TKO's bank account, I mean, that is a lot of money, but we're also talking about a multi-billion-dollar company. Their stock prices went up after the news broke. So that should let you know how this is good news for them. This is sort of a payoff to just do away with this, something that would have been a complete nuisance and something that really could have literally dismantled the organization as we know it. They just paid a little bit of money and it goes away. Now, $280,000 per plaintiff. I mean, that is a lot of money to the average person. It's certainly more money than I'm going to make this year. But when you're looking at the original figures that were thrown out as far as the estimated payouts, if this were settled or if this actually went to trial and was reached some conclusion inside the courts, I mean, it's a fraction of what the UFC would have had to give up. Now, what does this mean for other promotions? I think for other promotions, this, for the most part, is terrible news, right? Without the sort of regulatory pressure to do anything different, without something to come in and literally change the UFC and break up the structure that currently exists, without them having to change anything, that means they just keep being the number one promotion. If you are a PFL, if you are one championship and your goal is to be the number one fight promotion, that's almost laughable at this point, right? The UFC has such a head start. They are so insanely profitable. They have made so many victories as far as just keeping things the way they are. You're playing a tremendous game of catch up here to the point where, is it even worth chasing the number one spot? I mean, even before this was announced, the idea of supplanting the UFC as the number one fight promotion in the world was laughable then, right? So that means as far as a lot of the talent that the UFC has the rights to, I mean, you don't have any sort of loosening of that, right? There's going to be far less opportunities for instance, Ngannou to lead the promotion and create his own path. There are going to be far less opportunities for someone like a Conor McGregor to hold power over the promotion and be able to get his way in a lot of ways. There is pretty much this stranglehold on the sport of mixed martial arts. So let me know what you think about this big news. Remember to like, share, subscribe, stay locked into Ringside Intel.